August 12, 2025, 4:15 a.m., Strait of Hormuz. The sea was silent, almost too silent. On board the USS Mason, an Arleigh Burke class destroyer, sailors stood at their stations, scanning the dark horizon. Suddenly, the radar screens exploded with light. 27 fast boats had surged out of the black waters, their wakes cutting sharp lines across the strait. Each one was armed, each one rushing straight toward the American ship. This was no ordinary patrol. This was a swarm attack, the nightmare every U.S. Navy commander in the Middle East knew could come without warning. The boats moved in formation, spreading wide, like a pack of predators closing on their prey. Rocket launchers glinted under the moonlight. Behind them, intelligence confirmed, drones were lifting off from the Iranian coastline. It was a strike designed not just to harass, but to overwhelm and destroy. For the crew of the USS Mason, the question was brutal and immediate. Could Americans steal and resolve, withstand the fury of a swarm meant to sink them before sunrise? The silence on the bridge was heavy, broken only by the rapid beeping of the radar. At first, it was just a cluster of blips, faint, moving fast, impossible to ignore. Then came the confirmation. 27 Iranian fast boats, accelerating, armed, closing in on the USS Mason from multiple directions. The Strait of Hormuz, one of the most critical maritime choke points in the world, had just turned into a battlefield. General quarters. All hands, man your battle stations. The announcement thundered through the corridors of the destroyer. Red lights flickered. Sailors rushed into position. Doors slammed shut. Every man and woman on board understood what was at stake. The difference between holding the line and becoming a burning wreck on the sea. Above deck, the crew swung into action. The phalanx CIWS, America's last line of defense, whirred to life, its barrels spinning in anticipation. Deck gunners gripped their weapons, eyes fixed on the waves. In the Combat Information Center, officers tracked every target, calculating ranges, plotting firing solutions. The USS Mason was not alone. A nearby Arleigh Burke class escort prepared to support, its Aegis system scanning the skies for drones. The strait itself seemed to hold its breath. Merchant ships scattered, turning hard to avoid the danger zone. Regional allies, Saudi, Emirati, British vessels, listened to the comms, bracing for what came next. To the Iranian swarm, numbers were their weapon. To the Americans, precision and discipline would decide survival. The boats were less than 5 nautical miles away now. At that range, rockets could be fired at any moment. The tension was unbearable. Every second dragged like an hour. A single order could unleash a storm of steel and fire. On the bridge, the captain of the USS Mason stared into the dark horizon. His voice calm, steady, yet edged with steel. Hold, hold. And then, in the distance, the first rocket flashed into the night sky. The first rocket burned a hard white line across the sky, and the dark sea answered with shapes. Searchlights from the destroyer cut through the spray and caught hulls skimming low, wakes foaming like claws. 27 fast boats, split into 3 attack packs of 9, fanned wide across the Strait of Hormuz. They came in staggered lines, each pack led by a heavier craft, armored bow plates glinting, twin mounts shining under the night. Their tactics were textbook swarm. Outer boats ran high speed to fix attention. Inner boats weaved and crossed, breaking targeting solutions. Midline boats carried the teeth, improvised rocket rails, recoilless rifles lashed to the deck, heavy machine guns that chattered. Even before they were in effective range, 2 boats to the rear dragged unmanned skiffs, crewed, low, likely packed with explosives, waiting for a moment of chaos. Then came the voice, flat, male, accented, measured, triumphant. American warship, alter course now. You are in Iranian waters. No coordinates, no courtesy, just the claim, and the threat behind it. The Mason's officer of the deck responded steady, asserting international transit. The only reply was tracer fire, stitching the night. Over the coastline, new signatures bloomed. For Shahid drones rose slow and purposeful, then tipped seaward, black deltas against a lighter horizon. Higher still, a Mohajer drone circled, relaying video to the swarm. Inland, truck rails were hot. If the Iranians intended to escalate further, the clock had started. Inside the Combat Information Center, the Mason's displays painted the problem in hard numbers and thin lines. Range to lead pack, 4.6 nautical miles, closing at 40 knots. Range to drones, 23 miles, descending. Merchant traffic. 2 tankers hard to port. A bulk carrier to starboard, all swinging wide to escape the kill box. The spy radar did not blink. Deck crews braced behind shields. The 5-inch gun elevated, depressed by fractions. Waiting. MK-38 mounts slewed. The phalanx spun, hungry, waiting for a target. The enemy leader flashed a light signal. Quick burst. Then 2 longs. Boats peeled off and surged. One cut across the Mason's bow, daring a collision. Another throttled back, laying a screen of smoke, oily, rolling low across the water. 2 more swung wide and dropped their unmanned skiffs, letting the tide carry the small hulls toward the destroyer's path. 3.5 miles. The captain exhaled once, steady breath in a room that had forgotten how to breathe. Fire control solutions locked, the ocean tight as a drawn wire. They've revealed themselves, the captain said, voice level calm. Weapons free, on my mark. The sea went quiet for a heartbeat, as if it knew what came next. The order came sharp, final. Engage. In an instant, the destroyer came alive. The 5-inch gun thundered, its first round carving a white arc across the night, slamming into the lead-fast boat. Fire bloomed. A heartbeat later, the phalanx CIWS screamed, spitting a storm of tungsten at incoming rockets. The air itself seemed to rip apart under the torrent, but the Iranians pressed harder. Rockets streaked low, some slamming into the water, geysers exploding just yards from the Mason's hull. A burst of heavy fire rattled from the enemy's midline boats, tracers raking the sea, probing for weakness. One unmanned skiff drifted dangerously close, its crude hull shattering under rapid-fire bursts, destroyed seconds before detonation. Above, the threat deepened, for Shahid drones tipped into their dive, engines whining as they set their course, the Mohajer circling high, relaying every second to shore command. The Combat Information Center tracked them relentlessly. Firing solutions passed from console to console. Weapons free. Prioritize drones, the captain ordered. A missile roared off the rails, a streak of light tearing into the dark. One Shahid fell burning, into the Strait. The ocean was now alive with fury. The second wave of Iranian boats surged closer, cutting into the Mason's defensive perimeter. 2 loose salvos of unguided rockets. One slammed into the destroyer's forward superstructure. The impact rocked the ship, shards of steel showering the deck, alarms wailing. Damage control crews rushed in sealing hatches, spraying foam, fighting fire. Still, the Mason held her line. The American answer was brutal. The 5-inch gun roared again and again, smashing another attacker into splinters. The MK-38 mounts spat fire, shredding 2 boats flanking from starboard. A Tomahawk was primed for launch, but the captain held it back. Too much risk of escalation. Not yet. Instead, discipline ruled, precision ruled. The Allies listened. The nearby escort destroyer locked its Aegis radar onto the sky, scanning for coastal missile launches. Saudi and Emirati patrols tensed, but none intervened. All eyes fixed on the Mason, alone for now, against the swarm. At 2 nautical miles, the battle closed to knife fight range. Waves crashed against hulls. Tracer fire stitched across the sea like red lightning. Explosions punched holes into the darkness. In less than 90 seconds, 5 Iranian boats already sinking, their crews throwing themselves into the water. But the swarm pressed on. 22 remained. Their strategy was simple: numbers, speed, sacrifice. On the bridge, the captain's voice cut through the storm, calm, cold. They think they can break us with numbers. He stared at the radar, watching the swarm tighten. They're wrong. The sea answered, with fire. For a moment, it looked as if the swarm might succeed. The Mason shuddered again, another rocket slamming into her port side. Smoke clawed upward, painting the night in streaks of black. Iranian boats cut closer, spraying fire, weaving fast enough to challenge targeting systems. Deck crews fought back relentlessly. But with every pass, the swarm pressed harder. 20 boats still surged, engines screaming, wakes slicing the Strait like knives. "This is it," a sailor whispered, voice barely audible under the thunder. But in the chaos, the Americans revealed their edge. "Activate layered defense," the captain ordered. The command spread like fire through the ship. The 5-inch gun shifted to suppressing fire, hammering the densest cluster of boats. The MK-38s locked onto flanking craft. The phalanx whirled into overdrive, stitching the air with 1,000 tungsten rounds per second. Above the Strait, the second missile launch split the sky. An SM-2 surface-to-air missile tore upward, erasing another Shahid in a bloom of flame. Then came the hidden hand, from beneath the waves. Miles away, unseen, a Virginia-class submarine had been tracking the battle in silence. Now, with coordinates locked, it fired. 2 heavyweight torpedoes surged from their tubes, slicing through black water at 70 knots. Seconds later, they struck. 2 Iranian command boats vaporized in geysers of water and fire, wreckage raining back into the sea. Panic rippled through the swarm, leaders disappearing in explosions. The reversal had begun. From the southeast, salvation roared in with afterburners. For F-35 Lightning IIs, scrambled from Al Udeid Air Base, slashed into the fight. Their sensors painted the battlefield in perfect clarity. Within moments, precision-guided munitions streaked downward. One bomb hit a skiff cluster dead-on, detonating the explosives meant for the Mason. Another strike ripped through the smoke screen, exposing boats that had thought themselves hidden. Above it all, an MQ-20 Avenger drone circled silently, feeding live targeting data back to the destroyer. Every move mapped, every course plotted. The Americans no longer fought blind. They fought with the full weight of 21st century warfare. The Strait became a killing ground. Iranian boats once pressing with confidence, now scattered in confusion. Some fled, only to be picked off by F-35s. Others charged in desperation, shredded by coordinated fire from the Mason and her escort. Within 10 minutes, the tide had turned completely. 14 Iranian boats gone, several more burning, crippled, abandoned. Only a handful remained, fleeing back to the coast, smoke trailing behind. On the Mason's bridge, the captain stood steady, eyes on the shrinking swarm. "They thought numbers could erase us," he said, tone iron. He looked to his crew, exhausted but unbroken. But America doesn't break. The night was no longer theirs. It belonged to American steel. The sea, once alive with fire, began to fall quiet. Where 27 boats had surged with fury, only smoke, flame, and scattered wreckage remained. 14 Iranian craft lay destroyed, ripped apart by gunfire, missiles, and torpedoes. Another 4 burned, drifting aimlessly, their crews leaping into the dark water. 9 fled toward the coastline, engines howling in retreat. The USS Mason stood battered, but unbowed. Her port side bore scars of impact. Blackened metal and twisted railings testified to the ferocity of the swarm. A small fire had raged on the forward deck, now extinguished by damage control teams. 2 sailors carried minor injuries. But against the scale of the assault, the survival was extraordinary. Not a single American life was lost. For the crew, the victory carried a heavy weight. The smell of cordite still hung in the air. The decks were slick with seawater and soot. Yet amid exhaustion, a fierce pride burned brighter than the flames that had threatened to consume them. They had stood against overwhelming numbers. They had held the line in one of the world's most dangerous straits. Messages crackled across the airwaves. Allies in the Gulf sent words of relief. Tankers resumed cautious passage. In capitals across the region, news of the failed swarm spread like wildfire. What was meant as a show of Iranian dominance became a spectacle of American resolve. The battle lasted just 43 minutes. 43 minutes that echoed like hours. And that would be remembered as proof. Swarm tactics might terrify, but they could not erase discipline, technology, and the steel backbone of the United States Navy. The ocean bore the silence once more, not because danger had vanished, but because it had been crushed beneath American firepower. When dawn broke over the Strait of Hormuz, the sea carried the scars of the night's fury. Black smoke drifted low, rising from burning wreckage scattered across the water. The sound of distant explosions had faded, leaving only the hum of engines and the crash of waves against steel. For the crew of the USS Mason, the silence was almost surreal. Hours earlier, they had stared into the jaws of a nightmare. 27 Iranian fast boats, armed swarming, supported by drones. Now the nightmare was over. America still stood. In less than 45 minutes, the destroyer and her escort had turned chaos into triumph. The swarm had been broken. Iranian commanders gambled everything on numbers, speed, and shock. They believed overwhelming firepower could bury discipline and precision. Instead, it was their fleet that was shattered, their confidence erased beneath a rain of American steel. The cost was not light. The Mason bore wounds across her hull, her decks scarred, her crew exhausted. Every sailor knew how close disaster had come. Yet, the very survival of the ship and the destruction of more than half the attacking force carried a message louder than any missile strike. The U.S. Navy was not just prepared, it was unbreakable. This was not merely a battle between boats and missiles. It was a confrontation of philosophies. Iran's swarm attack represented chaos, numbers without precision, sacrifice without strategy. America's defense represented resolve, technology, and the unyielding belief that discipline can hold against any storm. The clash proved once again, war is not won by sheer numbers, but by skill, by steel, and by the spirit of those who refuse to yield. Across the world, allies breathed easier. Shipping lanes reopened. Messages of reassurance rippled through NATO channels. But in Tehran, the silence spoke differently. What was meant to be a demonstration of strength had become a demonstration of failure. The world had watched, and the world had seen who held the line. For the American people, stories like this echo beyond the battlefield. They remind us what the Navy represents: guardians of freedom, protectors of allies, sentinels of the seas. When chaos surges, when the night grows darkest, it is American sailors who stand ready. The Mason's victory was not just tactical, it was symbolic. It told every adversary, no matter the odds, no matter the numbers, America does not falter. And so, as the sun rose higher, the crew stood weary, but proud. They had written a chapter in the unbroken legacy of the United States Navy. A legacy forged not just in steel, but in courage. The sea fell silent again, not because the danger was gone, but because it had been crushed by American resolve. Now the question remains, could swarm attacks ever truly overwhelm the U.S. Navy? Or does America's technology and discipline ensure that no matter the odds, the result will always be the same? If you believe these stories of courage and strength must be told, then stand with us. Like this video, share it with others who honor the spirit of the Navy, and subscribe for more frontline military stories. Together, we remember. Together, we remain proud.